If you're new to Linux, one of the things that you might notice is it looks a lot like those old hacking videos that you see from the 90s. And in reality, yeah, kind of, although without the theatrical flair to it that they have in the movies. So let's look at some of the basic Linux commands that you should be able to use on a day-to-day basis. Starting with change directory, or more commonly known as cd. cd exists both in Linux and Windows environment, and it has a couple of, let's say, funny little things. So we can use the autocomplete to go to our download directory, just by typing the first three letters, and then by using cd and then minus, I can jump back to the previous directory. I can do the same now to go back to downloads, but there's also the cd with a tilde sign. Now that allows me to jump back to my home directory. So in this case, that was actually the previous directory anyway, but you get the idea. You can also use cd without using the tilde sign, depending on your Linux distro. Next up, let's look at some listing commands. So you've got a couple of different variations of this. So the first one we're going to start with is the ls. So this shows you all the files and folders. Then we have ll, which shows you all the files and folders with permissions. And as you might notice, it includes the hidden ones. You can do that also in ls, but you need to use the ls-a to see the hidden ones. Depending on how you're doing permissions, etc., it might be more useful to use ll. Next on our list is creating directories. So directories not too difficult. You have the mkdir, so short for make directory. And we're going to do something a little bit more interesting than just create a directory. We're going to create a directory with lots of subdirectories. So we're going to use the -p. I'm going to create a folder called Star Wars, and inside of Star Wars I'm going to create 3 folders. One called New Hope, another one called Empire Strikes Back, and last but not least Return of the Jedi. Now this is encapsulated using the squiggly brackets, and then we're using the quotation marks to create folders with spaces in them. If I didn't have spaces in my folder names, then I wouldn't need to use the quotation marks. Now that those have been typed out, we should be able to just go ahead, hit enter, and that will have created all the folders for us. And we'll do a quick ls and just show that the contents of the Star Wars folder has these 3 subfolders. And also, yes, I know, I'm a nerd. Anyway, the next one is, well, we have a folder, let's remove it. So we're going to use another command here. So we're going to use rm for remove, and we're going to use a rf, so we're going to remove the folder, but we're using the f to force because we have not an empty folder. We're just going to check now that that has been done, and we should see that folder comes back with does not exist anymore. And we can move on to our next command. So with file creation and modification, there's a number of commands. We're going to start with the most basic one for creating a blank file. This is commonly used, and it's called touch. It's a straightforward. You state the name of the file after touch, or the subdirectory you're creating and whatever, and it just creates a empty file. Nothing super spectacular from that point of view. Other techniques can create files with content. Now, with creating content, you need to declare an exit character. Now, you could just open up VI or Nano or any of the text editors, even cat itself. But in this case, we're just going to do a cat greater than name of file. So in this case, the file is going to be called test. We're not even going to give it an extension. We're going to use the less than, and end of file, which is the short definition, which is EOF, which you'll commonly see in the examples. Then every line in between will just be another content line to the file. So here I've got 2 lines, and if I go put EOF, it will recognize that that's the end of the file, and we're done. Now we can look at this either with an editor, or we can actually use a command called less. Less shows you the content of the file without the editing options, which is kind of useful if you just want to see what's in there. So here you can see the content of the file, and you have to hit Q to get out of less. Straightforward enough. Now let's look at now moving the file, or in this case renaming it. So we're going to use the move We use the test to the test.txt. So we basically moved it from one to the other. So now if I do the less, you can see that our file was moved and the content is still there. So everything is still as it was, just the rename was the part that took place. So what if we wanted to do the reverse and actually empty out our file? Let's say we have an existing file with content. Well, we can just use the greater than, then the name of the file, and we've successfully emptied the file. So what else can we do? Well, let's move on to something a little bit more complicated, shall we? We're going to use the cat to create content again, and this time we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a bash script file. So we're going to call it test.sh, which is the common extension for script files. We're going to put some content in there. So we're going to tell it that, hey, this is the bash terminal, so we're going to do the bin-bash, and then we're going to put a simple echo hello world into the content. Now I'm going to show you that there's two ways to run this. There's the one that you should use, and then there's the one that's just quick, dirty, and easy if you need it to. So the first one, which is the quick, dirty one, is you can tell it the type of file. So we know it's a bash file, so we can just put bash and then the name of the file. And then it will run it simply because it already knows what the interpreter is. Now, if you don't know what the interpreter is, and you just want to run it as a script, you'd use the // and then the name of the file. However, in this case, that's not going to run. And the reason that that's not going to run at this particular moment is because we haven't given it executable rights. And in order to run it, we need to give it an executable right. So we use the change mod, we go +x, so x is the executable. So we're now telling the file to have the attribute that's executable. And now if we run that in the same way that we did before, we'll see that this time it runs as a script file. Now that sums it up for this video. Hopefully you liked it. If you did, you know what to do. If not, you also know what to do. And as always, see you in the next one.